All right, welcome back, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and checking out that last commercial. So tonight we have Jack Mamais. Wave and say hi, Jack.
Hi.
Hey, and we also got Andrew Greenberg, who you just watched on the Georgia Game News Network. Unfortunately, his camera is defunking right now.
I'm waving anyway.
There you go. He's joined with us tonight. Jack Mamais, he's been working in video games since 1995. That's not older than me, so I have more gray hairs. So he's a director at Activision. He was a director at Activision on the Mechwarrior 2 and Heavy Gear 2 franchises, and was also COO of the LA game company Check 6 Studios, where he produced the game Spyro, Entered the Dragonfly. Jack also served as a lead designer for the PC titles Far Cry and Crysis, and was a creative director at Midway Games in Chicago. I've spent many hours playing Far Cry and Crysis, so yeah, it's cool, very cool to get to talk to Jack about that. But anyways, lately he's directing his hardcore space sim, Starfighter Inc. for Impeller Studios, and teaching game design at the Savannah College of Art and Design. That's actually in Savannah, right?
That's correct.
All right. So SCAD, we have one here in Atlanta, but also, the roots down there in Savannah. Starfighter Inc. is the next generation PC space combat simulator that places players in the spacesuit of mercenary star pilots in the year 2230. And the game is built on the Unreal 4 engine, just successfully funding from Kickstarter. And if you look up on our YouTube channel, you'll get to see the very first look that we did before it was actually available for playtesting, and Jack gave us a little tour, and then you'll see a second first look of Starfighter Inc., which is really cool because Andrew and I both got to fight with Jack and we had one of your Philip. All right, thank you. We had Philip join us, and I beat the snot out of all of them. I did.
It was Brian, no matter what he says.
Right, I was wearing the GGDA shirt, so it gave me more HP, which is something cool that we're definitely going to have to approach here tonight because there's a lot of updates that have been coming. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you the game, but I have read and kept up with a lot of the news with what's going on and their updates, and it's super duper exciting. It's a really, really cool game. But we're talking about Jack. Jack. Big question here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and before you became a game developer, like what were your favorite games as a child? What got you into gaming in general? And tell us the evolution of Jack before he became a teacher or a game developer.
Wow, that's a great question. I have loved games ever since I was a little kid. I mean, I was born in the middle 60s, I guess we could say. And I can remember playing things like Mousetrap and Monopoly and games like that, board games when I first started learning about games. Of course, card games like Go Fish and War and stuff like that. I remember the first real, the big year for me when I was first exposed to probably what would set off the rest of my life. A good friend of mine, my best friend at the time, he lived down the street, and for Christmas he got three things for Christmas. He got a Pong, Magnavox Pong. He got a copy of the book Sword of Shannara, and he got a basic Dungeons and Dragons thing. And those three things all together probably sum up my career, are those three influences at that time. Of course, when I saw Pong, I was totally blown away by video games and fell in love with them forever. My parents, I wouldn't say soon after, but a little bit after, bought us and Magnavox. I think it was a Magnavox and television. Is it Magnavox? So we had those games. They were fantastic. They were like almost PC games at the time. Games like Sea Battle. It was almost a real-time strategy game. But I would say the Dungeons and Dragons box set, I opened it up and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I said, okay, because I knew how to play board games, and I opened this up, and this is in the 70s, 75, 76, and D&D really wasn't quite the demon worshiping aspect that it is considered back in those days, when it was so good that parents thought their kids were worshiping demons and they were scared of it. But I looked at it and I read it and I didn't understand it because there was no board. There was no there. I mean, there was dice and you could see there was dice, but there was no board, right? And there was nothing. There was like a conventional game. And I read it and I was fascinated. Here's a list of treasure and here's a list of monsters and there's numbers with monsters and all these things. And I was just, how do you play this? I was blown away. So I was in high school at the time and I sought out, I asked around and everybody and said, does anybody know how to play this game? Can they teach me? So they introduced me to what would become my dungeon master. Even to this day, he's my dungeon master decades later. His name is Bill Brown. And we went over to his house and I played the first game of Dungeons and Dragons. And I rolled my first character and called him Alanon, which was right out of Sword of Shannara books. That's where the Sword of Shannara thing came in. And fell in love with Dungeons and Dragons. And I played it I played it so much that if I was like, if you put me in prison or on a desert island and I have Dungeons and Dragons, I'm good to go. Right? I mean, I don't really need food. I don't need anything else. And I just used all my time playing that. And what I didn't know is that would later teach me almost everything I need to know about game mechanics and the way games work. And really, D&D is really the basis for all, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I do teach a class on game history. It probably was the main influencing factor for many of the first real game developers out there, like of course, Richard Garriott, the guy Will Crowther who did Adventure. They were all, Will Wright. They were all big D&D players and dungeon masters. And even today, you see things like hit points came out of D&D, level design came out of D&D. There's terms now that are just that they make up the game industry, and those came from there. So I love playing D&D. Played a lot of that. Ran my own dungeons. Also, my friend Bill, I'd go play at his house, and he was always, his parents were really good to him. They would buy him whatever he wanted as far as games are concerned. So he, of course, had a good network PC set up around 93, and he had Doom. He had the original Doom, and he got he got DM Edit, which would allow you to play because Doom was essentially a single player game, but if you added a mod called DM Edit, I think that was the name of it, you could run multiplayer and play mods. And we would hook our computers up and just play multiplayer Doom until all hours of the night. And I was hooked. I just loved playing Doom and played it forever. And I thought it was one of the greatest things of all time.
Until somebody hit the tilde and /God. Sorry.
Well, I mean, the guys I play with, none of us are cheaters.
Okay.
If you're a cheater, you're not really getting the most out of the game.
That
right?
is true.
If you can beat everybody, you don't feel the thrill of the game. So I've always been I would never cheat because it's like that. For that, it's not fun. Now I wish I could cheat in games like Clash Royale today and play our new Battlegrounds because these games are hard.
Yeah.
But we never cheated. So we played at Bill's house. We played a lot of that. We played a lot of Dune 2, which was my first real-time strategy game that I ever played after Sea Battle. I guess you'd call Sea Battle a real-time strategy game. And a lot of Command & Conquer, a lot of Red Alert. So
oh, yeah.
I cut my teeth there at Bill's house. And Bill had little miniatures, little Battletech miniatures. And I'd always say, what are these things? Because we never really played. We played some D&D at a time, but when we were into video games, computer games, we mostly played PC games. And we were kind of lost our RPG games. But I was real interested in Battletech. So I took the source books home and read all about them. And later, after I got out of college, I was a video producer for a while down here in Savannah. And I decided to make a move out to LA to continue my career in video production. And I was trying to work on films during the day, and I was bartending at night. And I met a guy from Activision because I didn't think I could work in video games because I was not a programmer, right? And at those days, they really didn't have artists in those days. Like, you really had to be able to code to do anything in games because everything was written in code. There were no game engines. Everything was built in code. So I'd never thought I had a chance to do that. But the guy said, hey, they hire producers. And he was a designer on Mechwarrior 2. And I'd read about Mechwarrior 2 in like PC Gamer and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, this sounds like the greatest thing of all time. And here's this guy saying, hey, just give me your resume and I'll pop it over to Josh Resnick at Activision. And 3 months later, I had a job as a producer at Activision, and it was kind of lateral move from video production to game production. And luckily, a lot of the same skill sets applied to game production. And I was able to work my way, and I knew everything about Battletech because I'd read those source books. So I was pretty excited about that I was able to, take that knowledge and apply it right to what I was doing in the game industry. And the rest is history, so to speak.
Awesome. What an awesome journey, and may all of you future starry-eyed game developers have the same fortune.
Play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, play D&D.
Play Andrew's games.
Play Georgia games in general. Play my games. Zapmill.com. You can find more there. In fact, actually, I'm updating a couple of games on the fly right now too. And then, of course, as he mentioned, Andrew, he's got Noble Armada in the works. Andrew, tell us a little bit about that.
It's the Fading Suns role-playing game. But Jack, I think one of the main reasons that Dungeons & Dragons was so instrumental in creating so many game designers and game developers was that the original rules were completely unplayable. Oh my God, those tan books and even the blue book. You had to become a game developer just to play the game itself.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Traveler is, right? Where Traveler is basically unplayable, and you've got to make everything up in order to play it, so you've got to have a great imagination. And they kind of just give you, the basic parameters. I really played a lot of first edition AD&D, and I think that's still a pretty damn good system. I mean, I still play that today, and that's where it sort of came together. But you're right, people had to come up with their own. It's just the Gygax certainly laid down the fundamentals of how to translate those, the fighting and everything into numbers. So you could actually say, okay, what happens when I swing a sword or do a magic potion or something like that? Because that stuff really didn't really exist before that. And he kind of led the way, I think. And I think in the modern game industry, I think he's, probably responsible partially.
Well, and he transitions us to something we didn't have before, which is these direct roles in the games we played. Risk, you're this amorphous general. Monopoly, I'm a race car or thimble. Life, you are still not a particularly created individual. You're kind of this very stereotypical form. And D&D, suddenly in a game situation, in a structure with rules and objectives and so forth, suddenly you become someone. And it is, it was definitely a transformative moment for gaming, which has really set the stage for video games. And now for Starfighter Inc.
Yes.
I wanted to do a name drop real quick, if you don't mind, Andrew. Last year's Siege. All right, since you guys are such big D&D fans, Andrew, I know you know this. Jack, are you familiar with Larry Elmore?
Oh yeah, Larry Elmore. he did a lot of illustrations for First Edition, and I think he did some covers and stuff like that. He really amazing artist.
Well, we had him last year at Siege, so
wow.
Yes, we did. He got to do some workshops and all that. It was pretty cool. So yeah, it's a little shameless self-plug there for Siege.
I got to get up there. I'm going to try to get up there this year. It's just, unfortunately, it starts right when our quarter starts, so it's right when the heaviest part of the quarter is. So,
first weekend of October, I know.
Yeah, I need to get up there. I'll try to make plans to come up there this year, if at all possible.
Okay. All right.
Better show with you there.
It would. I'd like to be able to get to meet you in person, and not this whole digital personality. And I'm going to pinch you to make sure you're real.
I'm real.
All right.
I'm real.
So last time we played Starfighter Inc. and I said I dominated everybody, including the developers, shamelessly, right?
Did well.
It did well.
You got hang of it pretty quick.
I love space games, and the Pong, the oh gosh, even the classic Galaga, Space Invaders, keep moving forward. First-person flight simulators, even the first Microsoft flight simulator, huge fan of. I kind of grew up playing those flight sims as well. But I'm gonna have to admit, probably one of my advantages was the armor and the shields, with the current system that you had back then. Apparently, you guys have been doing some updates on that, huh? To the players' armored and.
Yeah, we've been doing some exciting stuff. So obviously, what the big thing that happened on Starfighter Inc. is we started releasing to our Kickstarter backers. So there were, depending on the level that you came in at, had earlier access, and we've got a Discord channel that they can come on and talk with us on a daily basis. So we've been putting it out there slowly, unpeeling it. And lots of passionate players, and they came back with us with all their issues and problems. So the guys and I decided we were going to do something called Ship 2.0, which is we completely revamped the way our ships worked and found out all the issues with them. Because the big problems that came back, and you're always going to find problems when you go into alpha, that's why you do it. So a lot of people really love their joysticks when they play, and we kind of developed more as a mouse and keyboard type game, because everybody has a mouse and keyboard, but not everybody has joysticks. But our more passionate players were, hey, I'm using dual joysticks, I'm using rudders, I'm using foot pedals, and I'm using throttle controls and eye tracking. And,
oh my god!
I'm using dual joysticks and everything. So we took a hard look at that. We put a couple of guys on that. We totally revamped the way all the input devices work. We think we've improved that a lot. But what came from that is our ships had a lot of overhead, so we were only able to run about 3v3 and still get our. We're shooting for like 90 FPS frame rate because we're a VR title as well as a regular title, and we did the Ship 2.0. We were able to revamp the way everything worked, and we're finding our new ships. We can get a lot more ships into the matches. It's a lot more solid. It's just once you do one thing, you understand everything about it. So you always want to kind of start over and do it again. And we took this opportunity to do that and move to Ship 2.0. So we're deep working on that right now, and we're trying to finish that up pretty soon. And then we're going to release our beta. And then we've let about half our Kickstarter players on there, which is about 1,000 people. And we'll probably release it to the other 1,500 when we go out to beta, and just let everybody start banging on it. And then hopefully soon after that, we can put it out to everybody, because we've got a lot of people asking, hey, can I still back the game and jump on it? And we're like, well, not really, because this is for the Kickstarter people. So we've got to kind of give them the advantage here. But we definitely want to get it out to everybody as soon as possible, and we're super excited about that.
Your product or production list as these different controller commands, I don't want to imagine the nightmare of all the different.
I mean, we love doing it. So for us, it's it's a labor of love. So we really, every little thing we fix makes the game better, and everybody on our team is there because they want to be there, and they work on the things they want to work on. So we're super happy, and that's why we put out an alpha, and that's why we're taking the time it takes to fix what we think are the major problems and the major issues have, because we want people to be as happy as you're never going to please everybody, but certainly we want to get as many of our users as happy as possible. Right.
So Jack, I know you're not going to be able to see this, and probably like a roughly a 30-second delay if you're watching the stream on anything. But for those who are interested, go to impellerstudios.com, IMPELLER studios.com, and you can find out a lot more information about the Starfighter Inc. and everything that they're talking about. But for the live stream session, I'm just going to kind of quickly throw up the diagram that's on your website of the spaceship. Maybe you know it by heart, maybe not, but our viewers should definitely be able to see this. Yeah, that looks all right. Where you can see the different improvements that you've made on the spaceship and your changes, like where's thicker penetration, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that now, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you focused on that. Or, I mean, well, you just did, but did you get to see that?
Let me pull it up. Okay, what am I looking at? I see you.
Sorry. So yeah, I kind of pulled up the picture of that you had of your spaceship here. I'll do it again. Here we go.
Where's it at? Ah, there you go. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, that is showing you the different types of armor and penetration stuff on the ship. So that gives you an idea of the areas that you hit, what's gonna, how it's gonna affect. And it's also there's gonna be a lot of customization, visual customization options. They're gonna be based on sort of this layout.
All right. Well, very cool. Looking forward to it. And for those of you who have got to play the game, you do have a good idea of what we were just looking at, and now you got a better idea on what some of those changes are going to entail. But also, I mean, there's so much stuff here on your website that that you've talked about. What would be some of your favorite milestones or adjustments since last time we did get to talk about Starfighter Inc?
Well, there's so many. I definitely our lead artist Remco has been working on our visual customization, because we had a lot of great responses about how we're allowing people to really go crazy on how their ships work and ships look. And he came up with a customization screen that lets you have detailed little colors changes on it and decals that you can apply to it and things like that. And it's just gorgeous. I mean, and sort of the creative things that I'm seeing people come up with is just blowing my mind. I love that. We've also got some new maps that we're working on. We've got a map that is we call it the Trojan tanker, and it's essentially a tanker, which is a freighter in our universe, is because there's no stealth, there's really no way to do sneak attacks on stuff. So in this mission, the ships are actually connected to the tanker. When they get close enough to this large tethered space station called the Meridian Station, the ships can separate from the tanker and they can use it as cover as they're going in. The defenders actually have to destroy the tanker, because if it hits, it's going to do major damage to the station, and you've got to protect as it goes in. It's a super fun mission. It was conceived by David Westman, who's our senior producer and evangelist and designer. And we're excited about that mission. We've got a mission that's inside an asteroid that's really an interior mission, and it really feels a lot now that we're playing it. It definitely makes me think of Descent when we're playing it.
Oh, wow.
Descent with a hardcore space simulator, because it's all interior, and you've got to have like a absurd amount of finesse and control to be able to not hit the walls and move through the interior spaces and work everything. And of course, Ships 2.0, which has been our major focus since last time we spoke. Those are the big things I'm super excited about.
Right on. So are we still? Obviously, we're still on the moons or within Saturn.
Yeah, our first release is going to be around Saturn space, and after a certain amount of gameplay, we're taking once we release the game, we're going to tally which side, North Star or Leith, which is our two factions that we're introducing. North Star in our universe is, think of it as like Boeing of the future, right? They're a big conglomerate that's got lots of power, and it's run by a guy named John North. And there's a lot of story. We're actually putting out a graphic novel that's one of our Kickstarter awards, and it goes into detail about where John North came from and how North Star formed, and sort of how a rival has popped up against them called Leith. And Leith is run, no, I wouldn't say nefarious, because everything in our world is very gray. So the good guys are not necessarily good, the bad guys are not necessarily bad, and we want to play it that way because we're in a world of mercenaries. We're really just doing it for money. And in the game itself, everything, you have to earn everything to get ships, weapons, ammo, upgrades. Everything has to be earned, and you've got to earn it while playing against other players. So you've got to really dig it out. And this mission developing between this rivalry developing between North Star and Leith, we are going to tally whether the North Star wins more games or Leith wins more games, and that's going to determine our next phase of our story. We've got branches written out depending on which wins the most, and then depending on what happens, we might go to different parts of space. We might go into a Jupiter space, we might go into a Mars space, maybe even an Earth space, depending on really what happens. So it's almost like the players are driving the story in our situation.
Oh, come on, let's go.
That's one of the things I like, that it's not really as much gray as there's a lot of room for the users to generate what the universe will be. It's not user-generated content; it's user-generated universe. Even cooler.
Absolutely, and we kind of wanted that. We promised that from the beginning that we were going to be a narrative-driven game, and we certainly are. There's a narrative behind our game that's driving the motivations of the characters that are going to be involved and the locations that will actually be involved. I mean, the whole game will take place in our solar system, but there's a lot of places in our solar system to be. So, I mean, it's years of content for us to explore.
Absolutely, I want to go to Europa.
That's coming, believe me.
Yes, and is there life underneath the ice?
There's definitely corporations that are exploiting it, if there is. So,
Awesome. Andrew, any other questions off the top of your head?
So speaking of exploitive companies, you are one of those rare devs who've had good success with big studio and now getting to run their own relatively small studio. Obviously, there are some similarities, but a lot of differences between these two experiences. Do you want to talk a little bit about both that journey and those differences you've experienced and the skills that translate between them?
Sure. My first job in the industry was at Activision, and they're arguably the #1 publisher on the planet right now. I mean, they're doing very well, either them or EA. I've worked for both. It's really great working for a place like Activision. You certainly feel that you're in the industry, and you certainly have a lot of support with PR, marketing. You can pay people lots of money to come work on your projects. You can have big teams. What you don't have is you don't really have a lot of control over where you're going, because you're kind of doing what the board of directors wants you to do. So whereas you might be really passionate about certain things, and I certainly had my battles with people at Activision on some of the directions that we took for certain things. You don't have a lot of control over that, because they have plans that you don't know about, and they have money things that you don't know about, and they have deals that you don't know about. So you're really just a hired gun, no matter, and I was a director there, but even as a director, I sort of, had my marching orders and I followed them. So where on one hand, you have an enormous amount of resources to do things, on the other hand, you might not necessarily be doing what you want to do. After that, I had my own company, we were a pretty big company. We had a lot of financing and funding. We were working on some pretty major titles. That was interesting, but the problem with running your own big sort of company, you definitely have to, you've got an oven that you're kind of shoveling resources into every month when you're making your burn down and you're making your payroll, and you've got to keep that going. You can't let it stop, or else you'll go out of business. So it's a lot. You're always chasing the next buck. You're always doing demos. You're always meeting with produced publishers. You're always doing milestone checkups. So a lot of my job during that, I had to do more production than design. It was really, chasing the dragon all the time. I know I don't know if that's a proper thing, but I used to call it chasing the dragon, because you always got to have it's about money more than anything else. And it's about financing more than anything else. And I found myself doing more of that and worrying about stock shares and things like that than really what game are we working on. And I had very little time to actually work on or design the games, which my true love is actually getting my hands dirty in the game. So I kind of left that behind when I went to Crytek. Crytek was a different situation, because Crytek, when I started there, they had not put out a game yet. They had a tech demo that they had done called Exile for NVIDIA that was basically an isle and had some dinosaurs on it or something. But they had beautiful tech. And when I came in, they had to deal with Ubisoft to do Far Cry, but Far Cry was not in the best of shape, and I started as a lead designer. So it was a small enough studio, and as a lead designer, I only had really the owners of the company above me, and they were more interested in what was going on with the financing, and they kind of left the game to me. So I was able to really steer the game where I wanted to, and I really got the game that I wanted to, which is Far Cry, and it was really enjoyable to see something that was even though it was the vision of Chevat, Yearly, the owner, it really was my ideas that were in everything that were in there, and I didn't really have to answer to a lot of people there. And you know, I got to meet with Ubisoft, and since I'd had a lot of experience working with higher ups in the game industry, I was always in on the big meetings with Ubisoft as we made our big decisions, and we got to put out the game we wanted. And I mean that franchise is still going strong to this day. Far Cry 5's, I think it's one of the best selling games this year. If I saw right, I think it's definitely still doing very well for Ubisoft. And when it came to Crysis, Chevat really just gave me a picture of this frozen tropical island, and I got to actually create the design document from scratch and lead the design team on that and really create the game I wanted to create. And I was super happy with Crysis. And I really got to get the graphics that I wanted and the realism and everything I wanted, because I really, my favorite part of making games is to make an immersive experience where you feel, you know, I want to make the holodeck on Star Trek one day. So I'm doing the best I can by working on computer games that are as immersive as possible. And that certainly all goes into Starfighter Inc. So in that case, I had a lot of the creative freedom, and I didn't have to worry about financing the company because they were taking care of that. So I really liked that situation. And I was able to generate 2 games that created 2 major franchises during that time. So that really was closer to my wheelhouse. This opportunity here with Impeller, I kind of, I came back to my hometown because I had missed my parents. I've been away from my parents for 20 years, and I kind of missed them a lot, and I wanted to spend some time with them. So I came back to Savannah to start my own game company, and I was recruited at SCAD to work as a professor of game design. And I didn't know anything about teaching, but when I got into it, I was able to use everything I learned in the game industry. Mostly the classes I teach are about design and production. So a lot of the classes I teach are either doing applied game design, which is teaching people to take an engine like Unreal 4 and put their ideas into it and do prototypes. So literally I'm working with, you know, if I have 2 classes, there might be 10 different prototypes I'm doing every quarter that are just absolutely the freshest and most original ideas. The most original ideas I've ever seen. And I get to work with these fresh students all the time, and that is really, it gives me that feeling. And prototyping is the best part of games, because you're not really, when you're working to close the game, you're going through a grind of, okay, you got to cross the T's and dot the I's, and it's really tough because you've got to work hard schedules. You're mostly editing out your ideas at that time when you're trying to close the game, so there's nothing original happening. But these students that I get to work with and these projects that I work with, it just keeps me invigorated. And the students are always, I mean, SCAD is lucky enough to have some of the best students in the world. And they are just full of ideas and they're full of excitement. So I go to work every day. I love going to work every day and seeing that. I was contacted by my chair at SCAD at the time, Louis Cataldi. He works at Epic now. Louis said he had a friend of his named Edmar, and Edmar wanted to do a space sim, and Edmar asked me to come aboard as creative director. And I looked at it, and it was great. I could do it in my spare time and stuff like that. So now I'm kind of got the best of both worlds, where I'm able to, I've now moved up to director of the project. So I'm now responsible for the game itself, but I leave all the business stuff and everything to other people in the company. So I don't have to really worry about that, and I can just lead the team. So I've kind of gotten to a spot that I really like it. Hopefully Starfighter is a success, so we can continue making games with that model.
It's going to be a success. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I mean, one of your biggest influence, I'm looking back on some of our oldest notes. You mentioned X-Wing as well. So
absolutely. X-Wing was I bought my first PC because of X-Wing. Went over a friend of mine's house. I remember this is when I was in Savannah working as a video producer, and one of the guys I hired at the company, he had I think 386 DX33 or something back in the day that wasn't, basically that's less than what's on an iPhone, iWatch now or whatever. But he showed me X-Wing. And to this day, I don't think they've done a better game than X-Wing. So it's really exciting that I've got one of the designers on that working with me as a partner, David Westman. And because I love X-Wing, I loved every bit of that. I mean, that was like,
agree.
wow, this is how you do a game, because you take a real simulator, because it used every key on the keyboard, plus every alt, plus every key, every control, plus every key, shift plus every key, literally every key. And it was like, the effects were great, the sound effects were great, the mission design was amazing, the graphics were way beyond everything else at the time. So it was a true masterpiece, right? And that definitely, that the other big space sim at that time was Wing Commander. And while Wing Commander was
Wing
cool,
Commander.
it was cool, but the graphics, it wasn't 3D. Like everything, all the ships were billboards, right? So they were all, I could tell they weren't really polygonal. They were just billboards, and the ships would turn and they look really weird. They later got polygonal, but that game, for some reason, the game always ran slow. But Chris did do Privateer, which Privateer was one of my favorite shooters of all time, and just stunning. Privateer was so good. And Privateer is probably the biggest influence on Starfighter Inc. If I could take one game that was the biggest influence on Starfighter Inc., it'd definitely be Privateer.
Wow.
Because I love the way that you had to earn, and that was definitely an influence on Mechwarrior 2 Mercenaries too. So I definitely was inspired by the way that you'd have to earn money, and you could buy weapons and you could buy upgrades and stuff like that, because that, I mean, now as a game design professor, I learned about short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, and why each of those aspects drive the desire to play the game. That certainly, most video games only give you short-term goals, which is go kill this thing and finish this map, where they don't really have, what are you reaching for in a medium term? What is the collection of short-term goals that you want to do to unlock something? And when you've got that drive to always unlock something, that keeps you want to play, and it really just keeps it interesting and cool.
So here's a little image to put in your head. Me as a child, hand making a face mask out of a plastic cup and rubber bands, playing X-Wing, strapping myself into a chair and focusing on this itty bitty monitor, trying to make it as realistic as possible. Anyway, so yeah,
I'll never lose that picture in my head.
Yeah, played lots of space games. I love it. So Epic Steve on YouTube, which reminds me, folks, while we still have a little bit of time left, if you're watching live streams and you got any questions for Jack, now's the time. Post it in chat, and we will definitely post it in there. But anyways, Epic Steve said he never played X-Wing. You have missed out on everything. But he also said he feels like Far Cry went downhill after 3 and 4. And was all right afterwards, but everything else was kind of garbage. And so I guess once you were out of the Far Cry game, the magic left.
I like what Ubisoft has done with Far Cry. Our tone in Far Cry 1, I mean, we were like a B movie. So everything was kind of hokey, and the guy had a Hawaiian shirt through the whole show, and the mercenaries were almost like Keystone Cops, where they were funny and goofy and you were killing them. The guy in charge was like a true cliche mad scientist creating these mutants and stuff like that. So we didn't really take ourselves that seriously, and we felt that was part of the charm of it. And Ubisoft bought the license from Crytek, and so I've never worked on another Far Cry title. They did try to get me to work on Far Cry 3. They tried to recruit me to work on Far Cry 3 in Ubisoft, but I did not. That didn't work out. And Far Cry 2, they went really super serious with it, where they kind of made it like the movie Blood Diamond, where it was in Africa.
Right.
Everything was really, really, really super hardcore and serious, right? And when I interviewed them for 3, I said, "Wow, where was all the joy? Where was the science fiction and the joy and the funniness of it?" And then they made Far Cry 3, and they went back to the island. They got out of Africa. They went back to the island, and it was more absurd, right? Where there was like a bunch of bros in a fraternity that kind of got beat up by this crazy guy, and there was like drugs involved and tattoos coming to life and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I feel they got really back to Far Cry and Far Cry 3. 4 was I played 4. For some reason, it felt a little dry to me. It took place in India, and It definitely felt like Far Cry 3, but they lost some of the humor in it. I mean, they still had a little bit of it, but again, it seemed to get more serious and had a little darker undertones. So I played through it, and I didn't enjoy it as much as 3. I did not play Primal. I don't know what Primal was. It was a caveman game or something. I didn't play that one. I can't comment on that one. Far Cry 5 looks like they got back into the humor a little bit with kind of like a Trump cult or something. I'm not sure. I haven't played it. It looks like it's sort of like a right-wing extremist situation. So I don't know, but apparently, it's making them a lot of money. So they must be doing something. They must be doing something right with it.
So we're going to delve back into Starfighter Inc. in here real soon, but also on YouTube, Kinjero310, what would be a good path to follow programming-wise to get into game development as an indie/industry experience?
Let's see. What would be a good path to follow? Certainly, programmers are what still drive the industry. If you don't have natural art talent, you need to learn to program, and you need to learn to program with C++ or C#. You need to go ahead and download an engine because you can get them for free. I mean, I really like Unreal 4. Obviously, that's what we're working on. So that's what I like working with. Unity is another famous engine. The CryEngine, Lumberyard, which is based on the CryEngine. Those are all good engines, but you need to be able to get in there and learn how to work those engines. But you can't really do original stuff unless you can program and create your own stuff. And no one's going to want to see your game if there's already something out there like it. Most likely, no one's going to be interested in it. You have to have some kind of hook to make people very interested in it, a reason to play it. That's why when we made Starfighter Inc., our hook was real science, because most space-based sims are based on airplane simulators, and they don't really take into account the science we're more like the movie, the TV show The Expanse, where most other starship simulators are like Star Wars, which George Lucas admitted that he took Battle of Britain and movies like that and cut them together to come up with the scenes. So they're all based on airplanes, and all the action is based on airplanes and ships. If you've watched The Expanse, ships don't move like that. They are very much, reactive thrust and slight maneuvers, and they're more about planning and weapons use and stuff like that. So, but you've got to have an original idea. You've got to learn to work with an engine, and you certainly need to learn coding. That'd be my advice for you, Kinjero.
So Epic Steve, also on YouTube, it looks like he answered your question, which he said, I'm currently working on a turn-based RPG for phones and the PC, and any tips for aspiring rookie developers?
Be original. Find something that nobody's done before. Because like I said, if it's already out there, the audience is... because there's so many games on mobile and so many games on PC, and you can get them many games for free to play now. I mean, you can get Fortnite for free, and that's the biggest game on the planet right now. And so you've got a lot of competition out there. You've got to have something that's going to stand out and be original, and then you have a better chance.
True that. Yeah, the gaming industry and games out there is just completely saturated. Which, all right. So coming back to Starfighter Inc. Some of your other improvements that I'm reading here. I'm a big fan of the audio portions. And where did I see that? I thought I saw here. Didn't you make some updates to your audio?
We're using Wise for the engine, which is the onboard Epic sound engine. It's kind of a plugin for a sound engine. We've got some great audio developers on our team, and they've just done a fantastic job. Really, I mean, we've got the way our sound works in the game is you've got your helmet on, and your helmet is actually giving you information about the battle space. It's telling you, it'll put graphics up when you need it. It'll highlight things when it's needed, but it'll also simulate the sound, because obviously there is no sound in space. There's no particles to carry sound. So everything is based on your helmet telling you need to hear this. So it'll tell you, when another ship is near, it'll let you hear their engines. When they use weapons, it'll let you hear the weapons. When there's explosions, it'll let you hear that. But it's really simulating that stuff. So if those systems get damaged, it goes silent. And our cool thing that our sound guys have done, they've been able to work within those parameters to make the game just absolutely thrilling and immersive and cool stuff like that. And we continue to refine every sound effect, and we look very hard to make sure that sound effects not only sound cool, but they give a tactical advantage to you when you hear it. So it's a challenge. It's a tough constraint, but they've done a great job.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's very interesting how we often talk about how sometimes you have to sacrifice realism for fun in games, and obviously the lack of sound in space is one of those. I mean, you can't have a space game without pew pew noises going around. What are the trade-offs do you think you're making along those lines? Where are you really having to focus on the fun, perhaps at the expense of realism?
Well, we've got an actual physicist working on the game, and everything we do right now has to go through him. So when we do a ship design, or we say we want to see what an explosion looks like, he will do the research and come back and say, here's what will work and what will not work. We'll put it in the game, but gameplay must rule the day. So at the end of the day, my job as director is to make sure the game is as fun as possible. So, I have a lot of David Westman, he's very big on making everything absolutely as realistic as possible with science. But if we did it absolutely true to science, you really wouldn't even have guys in the cockpits, right? Because everything would probably be drones and stuff like that. So obviously we've got to make some gameplay aspects, but pretty much most of it still is very science-based. But when we have to, we definitely will override it to make sure the game is fun. So it's tough. We've had some big battle. We've had some battles about it.
Zeraspace.
Hey, he's our physicist. That's Zeraspace.
Hey,
Zach. So if you have any physics questions, he can ask it. So he's happy to say there aren't as many concessions as one would think. So we give him a lot of power on the game. So he definitely, in all of our ship designs, weapon designs, orbital mechanics, the way things move in space, everything, he is on it 100%. And he's getting his PhD in physics now at Notre Dame or something like that. So he's a pretty great guy. We love that. If it wasn't for him, we would not have been able to make this game. So he's definitely super valuable to us.
Is Starfighter Inc. his dissertation?
It could be. PhD in aeromechanical engineering at Notre Dame. There you go. So we'll pretty soon have a doctor of aeromechanical engineering.
Wow. Wow, that's just part of what makes the game so fun.
Yeah, you got to be careful, Zeraspace, because if your dissertation committee can beat you in your own game, you don't get your PhD and you're stuck on the masters.
Oh, he submitted it for his undergraduate senior project. Full marks. There you go.
Wow.
So he did use it in part of his schooling. So I'm proud to say that we've helped him get his educational going.
Awesome.
His advisor plays it. That's exciting. I didn't know. So
well, Jack,
yeah.
I'll actually say one thing. The SCAD game dev students have done really well at game dev competitions. And I think it speaks well not only to their ability, but how well organized they tend to be going into it. And I think that's an amazing look at the project management skills you're able to bring across to them. When Epic Steve asked about any tips for aspiring rookie developers, do you have any tips for rookie project managers?
I teach agile game development because that is what I feel is the best way to build games when you're because agile. I don't know if our audience here is familiar with agile, but a lot of software projects are built building called with waterfall stage management, which is very top down. That means there's a director and a producer and a tech director, and they drop a plan. It's very much like how a house is built, right? So when you build a house, you'll draw the blueprints up, and then you'll build everything according to the blueprints, and you won't deviate at all from the blueprints. That sounds good, and that allows you to build stuff that's known commodities. But when you do with games, and you have a lot of, let's be honest, very ego-driven people that are working on it, they want their ideas heard. Agile is ground up, so everybody kind of can get their ideas into it, and every week you have Andrew says ego-driven. You have everybody has their ideas. So, and actually in Agile, every 2 weeks you have a different person on a team actually run the team for that 2 weeks. So, and everybody has a say in what's happening. It's definitely ground up based. So look into agile development. It's worked very well for us, and we've got a distributed team. I mean, we don't have a physical office. As you can see behind me, I'm working in my home office. This is probably the central of where the game is worked on, but we've got people all over the world. We've got people in all over the United States, LA, Indiana, North Carolina. We've got people in Europe. We've got a lot of people working in the Netherlands on us. Zerospace was in Beirut when he started with us, and now he's over here in Notre Dame. So every day we meet at 12 o'clock noon, because that kind of worked well in Europe, and it worked well here at 6 o'clock there, and 12 for lunchtime for many of us here. And we've been doing that for many years, and we have meetings every single day. And that's really important, is when you have a team, you meet every single day, because if you just let it kind of drift, it'll disappear. So it's good to now Notre Dame's in Indiana. Yeah, I don't know what school he was in Beirut. He can probably tell you here. He's listening. So that agile is a really good way to do it, and write good design documents before you go into it. Really think about what you're doing before you create the game, and have everybody read the design document before you start working on it.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, I appreciate it.
Use a good engine. Use Unreal 4 right now. Unreal 4 is the best out there, as far as I can tell.
Oh, we'll have arguments from other game developers that we stream with. But hey, I'll definitely admit all of the game engines and development engines out there have something very strong working for them all. I'm using one particular right now called Fusion 2.5, even though there's no scripting language involved with it. It's very logic based, and it's good for the younger crew that I work with and my students, just to even get the programming logic wrapped around their head before they start scripting, and then throw some Unity in their face and throw some Unreal in their face, and that, at least they'll have something legs to stand on.
Some people build engines, RPG Maker and Game Maker. It depends on what you're building, really, to what you can use. We mostly teach Unreal 4 at SCAD, so most of my students use Unreal 4. We do have some Unity people. You have to be a stronger programmer to use Unity. That's definitely built for coders, whereas Unreal is definitely, for us, it's better for designers and artists, as far as I can tell.
Cool. I think some of our live censoring kicked in there, or maybe it was just the stream dropping for whatever, but we didn't hear all the names that you said. It's okay. So last thoughts before we close out the stream here, and this is also your last chance as anybody watching the streams. If you've got any questions, be sure to pop them into chat. And so I'll just kind of close out saying, Jack, this has once again been a very awesome stream with you. Please, by all means, take the stage, take the microphone away from me, and tell us any and all where we can find information about Starfighter Inc., Kickstarter, YouTube, or Facebook. Go for it.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Andrew and Brian. You guys are big supporters of ours, and we couldn't do this without you, and you help us get the word out. And we're really going to need a lot of players to make this work, because it is multiplayer focused. So everything you guys have done for us, we really, really appreciate it. And we consider you guys partners with us, and we love everything that you guys done for us. So thank you for all of that. We've got Impeller, www.impeller.com is our website. We have a forum there if you want to check up on us. We've got a Twitter with Impeller Studios on Twitter. We've got a Facebook, look for Impeller Studios. So we pretty much post everything to all. So if you're on any of those, you'll be checking those out. Tell your friends about us, because we're going to be coming out pretty soon, and we're going to need a lot of players playing our game. We're going to make some announcements soon about our game concerning our release date and a few other surprises. It's going to be happening pretty soon, so keep your ears out. And we just look forward to making a game that we hope a lot of people will enjoy.
Do we have any kind of somewhat of a ballpark estimate when it might come out live?
That depends on how Ships 2.0 does. So
okay.
That's kind of in development right now. That's going to roll out pretty soon, within the next month or so. And when that comes out, if that works out pretty good, it's going to be a lot closer. We'd love to put it out in the fall if at all possible. That would be the best case scenario. So, but I really can't make any promises right now. Like every game, I know you guys are tired of hearing every game developer says that, but it's a moving target. So you definitely want to, you want to keep everybody interested in it, but you don't want to rush it out so you blow it, right? So that's why it's really hard to put release dates until you're a solid beta.
Andrew, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously great stuff, and we could do just another hour arguing Unreal versus Unity versus Fusion.
Yes.
We don't have another hour. Your passion for this and for game dev is obvious and honest, and these hours go by way too quickly, Jack.
Thank you, Andrew. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I will try to get up to this year if I can. If there's any way I can make it, I'll move heaven and earth to get up there, because I need to be more of a part of that, because I'm proud to be a Georgia game developer, and I'm just not doing my part by going to Siege and really supporting that enough. So I need to work on that as hard as I can, and I'll certainly try to do that this year.
We'll organize a massive Starfighter playtest. And last comment from online, Wonder J on Mixer says he's looking forward to playing it. And on YouTube, Epic Steve says, from what I've seen in the video for the Kickstarter, this game looks dope. How do you teach classes and still find time to make a game like this? Your time management must be amazing.
Luckily, I'm single right now. So kids, so that means I can. And right now, I've got the summer off from SCAD, so I'm able to work full time on the project for this summer. And it's a labor of love. I mean, the SCAD is my day job, so I've got to do that and focus on that. But when I'm home at night, I'd love to be working on Starfighter Inc. So it's a lot of time management, and it's been a labor of love, and it gets tough sometimes. But every day we work on this. It's a joy when somebody plays the game and they love it and they have fun with it. It makes it all worth it.
Yeah,
that is a great line to leave it on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So any of our YouTube viewers watching this after June 26th, 2018, if you're looking at Jack's handsome face and trying to get connected with him, you're not going to do it through YouTube. But anyways, so closing it all out, thank you once again, Jack. This has been awesome. Also, thank you to our Patreons, the Georgia Game Developers Association. We are a nonprofit organization, so special shout out to Stephen Coffey, Burton Posey, Lee Friedman, James Simpson, which you can find his game Snarf Quest, Trey Carpenter, Joe Casaval, which you can find his games at Puzzles by Joe. Patreon, your support helps us with efforts to improve game developers and their community, as well as helping to bring better games to life, like Starfighter Inc., right? Yes, and our stream is also for gamers looking to learn more about what goes into making their favorite games, and it's also for new designers looking to break into the industry, like you heard tonight. It's also for experienced designers looking to improve their skills. So definitely check out our Patreon. There's extra bonuses and benefits for different levels. Social media for GGDA, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at ggda_org, or you can find us on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/groups/ggda.org. And also, as you see here on our live streaming, we're streaming on YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer. You can find tons of our content on YouTube. All of these you can find at /Georgia Game Devs. Definitely go check out Starfighter Inc., our first look that we did last year, and then our second first look that we did not too long ago. And there's been a huge difference and improvement in the game dev. I mean, it's just awesome. I love watching this game grow. Other than that, again, like we've talked about Siege, we're going to somehow, some way teleport or run down there and drag Jack up to Siege.
If there's a teleporter, I'd absolutely doing it. That 4.5.
Oh, your mic is dropping. Say that one more time.
That 4.5 hour drive is a little rough when school's just starting. That's the only problem. So
I hear you.
I'll try. I promise. I'll try to get up there.
Darn you for making realistic games. We should have made a teleporter. Anyways, thank you so much. First weekend of October, definitely got to check out Siege. It's focused on game development and learning more about game development. That's siegecon.net. That's I before E if you don't know how to spell. But otherwise, thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Jack. Again, this has been an awesome stream. Love streaming with you. Love watching this game grow. And looking forward to our next stream, whenever that may be.
Yeah, we'll play it next time when we're ready. We'll play the new version.
Absolutely.
Back
yeah.
in the cockpit.
I need to update. That's the only reason we couldn't stream. Take a look at that. But anyways.
Next time.
Next time. Again, all right, so I'm going to throw one more commercial in everybody's face. So check it out, and good night. Where's that button? I got to learn how to drive. Here we go.